of Learning Disabilities Awareness Month, I want to talk about how everything we've learned connects to two things we talk about here at our school: executive skills and the No Place for Hate pledge. Throughout this month, we've learned that many people, both students and teachers, have learning differences, like ADHD or dyslexia. These differences can make it harder for them to learn or stay organized in the same way that others do. But that doesn't make anyone less capable of success. In fact, everyone has strengths, and sometimes we just need to find the tools that work best for us. One set of tools we've talked about are executive skills. Executive skills are things like organization, managing time, staying focused, and handling our emotions. Some of us are strong in these areas, while others need more practice. For students with learning disabilities, executive skills can be especially challenging. But remember, these skills can be practiced and improved, just like we practice sports or instruments to get better. And just like with any skill, we can all support each other along the way. This brings us to our No Place for Hate pledge. Part of standing up for others means being kind and inclusive to everyone, especially those who may have learning needs. If you see someone struggling to stay organized or taking longer to finish work, remember, they might be working on their executive skills. We've pledged to make the school a place where everyone belongs, where no one is left out because they learn or work differently. Let's carry forward the lessons we've learned. Understand that learning disabilities are just differences in how we learn. Support each other in building our executive skills, whether that's offering a hand with organization or cheering someone on when they're working hard. Stand up when we see someone being treated unfairly or excluded. And remember that kindness and acceptance helps us all grow. Thank you for being part of this incredible community and for helping us live by our core values every day.
Hi, I'm here with Miss Dyson, my former teacher. So, where do you teach?
I am Denise Dyson and I teach 5th grade. I teach reading. I had you for reading.
Yeah, I think I'm starting to remember that year. What's school like for you?
Well, I always knew I was low. I grew up in a small rural town in Illinois, and back in the 60s, don't tell anybody that, but so a long time ago, before most teachers really knew about disabilities, especially when you're in a rural community, not in a big city. And so my teachers really didn't understand me. They just, I think my parents even had a hard time understanding. My older sister was super smart, read very young, and it took me about, I was probably in 5th grade before I could really read. But I always knew I was low. I always knew I was behind. I was in the lowest reading group. I got pulled out, but I was never identified. Like a pull out where a teacher would pull me out to work on reading or math, because math was really hard for me too. I did a lot of crying when it came to math time.
I mean, schools, at least everyone has had some sort of experience like that.
Yeah, especially students that are neurodiverse like us, right? So.
And speaking of neurodiverse, when did you realize you were neurodiverse?
It took me a long time. Like I said, I grew up without having those experiences and teachers that knew about it. So I was in college, believe it or not, and my college professor, who recognized that I was having difficulty in some areas, and I was asking her a lot of questions when I got into education about special needs and things like that. And she said, well, let's do a little assessment. And she did an assessment for me. She was a doctor, had a doctorate in education, and she did a small assessment, and lo and behold, she said, you know what? I think you have dyslexia. And Later on, I totally knew I had ADHD as well because my parents had told me I was always bouncing around the house, kicking the thermostat off the wall, doing flips down the hallway and all kinds of things. But it wasn't until I was an adult until I realized, oh, there's a name for that.
Yeah.
Like, I really have a thing, and it's not just me.
Yeah, so like it's definitely hyperactive type versus
Both. I was combined. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of that where it's either one other or just like 200 on both.
Exactly. Double dosed.
So when you figured out that you were, did you ever find like a community like people like us or like you?
Not really. Not until I came to Fletcher. It was really interesting. You know, I became a teacher, and I really enjoyed. I was a regular ed teacher, teaching in a classroom. And the year that I had a large cluster of students with learning differences was my favorite year. And I thought, maybe there's something there. And then I came to Fletcher and I kind of found my niche. I found where I really fit in. I understood the kids, I understood what they were going through, and I understood how their brains worked differently. So this is where I found my niche.
Well, I guess that must be really common thing to find like people who think like you and like while they may not be the same as you, it's just nice to know that they're there and you're not the only one. So
Exactly. And it helps to know, like, I could see myself in so many of my students when I first came here. I was like, oh, that was me when I was in school. And so I could offer the empathy that, you know, other teachers maybe who hadn't gone through it weren't able to do.
What advice would you give to people who either have found that they're neurodiverse, haven't, or just in general, to people who are like us? What would you give to that community?
I would say just embrace yourself. Embrace your differences. Embrace the fact that, yeah, you might struggle in one area, but you have strengths, and you can use those strengths to be successful, to find your niche. So yeah, I was, you know, I think my niche in high school was sports, because obviously I was very hyperactive, and so I was very athletic. And my parents were pretty intuitive in realizing I needed an avenue to shine, and they insisted I be in sports. I probably wouldn't have got involved because I was super shy when I was younger. But they insisted, nope, you got to do it, and I did it, and it really became my lifeline.
Yeah, and yeah, that's really good too. I mean, during this interview, this entire time, I've been using my ring constantly.
Yeah, as your fidget?
Yeah,
Yeah.
So I want to ask the audience, how do you overcome your supposed differences, and what advice would you give to others? Thank you for tuning in.
My name is Tracy Carbone. I am a 6th grade reading comprehension teacher.
What was school like for you?
It was a challenge.
When did you first realize you had a learning disability or a neurodivergent?
So I'm old, and back in the day when I was in elementary school, every subject was difficult. So I grew up and became a teacher, obviously, and I started analyzing what were my issues. I don't think I had a learning disability per se. I was 4 years old, and in upstate New York, you could go to school as a 4-year-old. I turned 5 on November 20th, so I went all of September, all of October, all of November with zero help from my parents at home. Dad worked, mom was a homemaker, and education just really wasn't valued. So I struggled because I was a really young kid starting school and didn't have any support, and everything was really, really hard for me.
Can you share an experience where you felt supported or accepted by others in your school community? How did that make you feel?
So, it's a great question. I wish I could say, oh my God, I had this teacher that was so amazing. Like I said, my elementary years were a struggle. And it wasn't until about middle school that things started clicking for me. And in high school, it's kind of when I knew that I wanted to be a teacher. And one of my English professors paired me up with a kid who was struggling. And it was at that point he had a conversation with me and said, hey, look, I know I've got everyone buddying up with whoever they want, but I put you with someone because I think you can make a difference. And that was tremendous. That really impacted me because he valued me. And here I've always been this, timid learner, and I never wanted to share. And he gave me confidence that helped push me through the rest of my high school career. And eventually I made Dean's List in college.
What advice would you give someone who is working to accept myself and other community members?
Man, everyone has challenges and differences. I always tell my kids, you might not be great academically, but you might be great in sports, or maybe you're really passionate about baking or knitting or whatever. Just don't compare yourself to others, especially if siblings. It's very challenging.
Yeah.